All right, Brendan, we have a quorum.
No, we do. We have 5, so we're ready to roll.
Let's call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the acceptance of the minutes. You should have all received minutes from our last 2 meetings from Joe. Thank you very much, Joe. I'll start with the minutes of February 18th. Were there any corrections or additions, deletions to those minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept them.
So I'd like to make a whoop.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to accept the minutes of February 18th. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Minutes of Tuesday, August 18th. Is there any discussion? Any corrections or additions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Okay, Joe, is there a second?
I'd like to second.
Thank you, Eileen. Any further discussion about the minutes of August 18th? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. No one opposed? Okay, financial report, Brendan.
So we do have, in the packet that you guys have, we do have the most updated expense control report leading us up all the way until August. Of course, we're still cutting through September, so I won't receive the September report until sometime probably in the first week of October. But we are on path here. There are no issues as far as the expense control report goes. We're on track with our budget. Sorry. Any questions about the expense control report?
Nope.
All right.
Okay, I entertain a motion to accept the financial report.
I guess I'll make a motion.
Okay, Pat, on a second, Pat?
Yes, I will.
Okay, Eileen made the motion, Pat seconded it. Any further discussion? Pretty easy this time of the year, so. All in favor of the financial report?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Brendan, Highland Valley, I don't know, maybe we can incorporate that with the first item under old business.
Yeah, so Pat is obviously not here, Pat Bruff, and I had actually reached out to the assistant to Highland Valley, the assistant to the director of Highland Valley Elder Services, Heather, and I had asked her if there would be a point person, and I don't even know why I didn't think of it, but Estelle had responded to the email that I had sent out to Heather and said that she'd be happy to walk Pat through the different requirements that would be involved with the Highland Valley Board. I don't believe he's followed up with her yet, so I have to get in touch with him. So I don't know if he's made contact, but I spoke to Estelle. I saw her at Big E's actually about a week ago, and she said that she hadn't been contacted at all, or not that she's aware of. So I'm going to see if Pat is going to follow up with that or not. So we can pretty much skip right past that because I was going to, because I don't have any additional information on that. But
All right, and just for
what's that?
And just for clarification, I don't know if Pat had actually agreed to it or he was strongly thinking about it. We could take a vote today and vote him in.
Yeah. Well, that would be one way to lose another board member, I think.
No.
We don't need that. So let's figure out something else here. No, I will follow up with him.
Okay.
But I think it is something that's going to constantly be brought up on old business, just because I feel like Highland Valley is really looking for this, and I don't. Again, they're a huge partner of ours, probably one of our biggest, and so I do feel like it's probably important for Highland Valley to, have some type of understanding as to like where we might be heading in the next few weeks with this.
I agree.
Not saying that he's got to or someone else from the board's got to dump themselves into this crazy, commitment, but I don't think it's as bad as people are anticipating. So. Anyway, but I'll save that until I can talk to Pat directly.
Okay, sounds good, Brendan. So, executive director's report.
Yeah, so in my report, I hadn't done this in a while, but I wanted to include stats as far as going all the way up to September 15th for the most part. So transportation, despite the huge crash in numbers just because I think, again, most doctors or specialists were being really cautious and not inviting people into medical facilities unless there was an absolute need for it. But even still, from March 13th up until now, we've provided 65 unduplicated folks with 946 different rides. So, and of course, this isn't including our delivery with our vans and stuff like that. This is just pure numbers off our ridership. So that's a low number, but again, I'm still impressed with what our van drivers have been doing. They are the ones truly on the front line. So they're getting people to these medical appointments. And you can see, as far as out of the duplicated different categories of transportation, we had medical at 414 and shopping at 403. So, you know, I think from the very beginning of the pandemic and once we shut down, there were two things that we knew were going to have to still be in place, was access to food. Yes, we have a grocery shopping delivery program, but not everybody wants to use that program. They like shopping for themselves. And because we're dealing with adults here, they can still choose to go out to the grocery stores, and we don't want to pull that away from them. What we can hold up to, though, is the state guidelines and how many people we can transport at a given time. So that is something that we are following closely. We're doing nothing beyond 2 passengers at a time, which the state guidelines allow. And I think I spoke about that a little bit last meeting, I think. And if not, maybe the one before it. But anyway, the state guidelines allow us to transport up to 2 people on the wheelchair vans. So that is something that we've been doing. But just as hats off to my transportation, we have 3 part-time drivers that are managing this. And because they're on the front lines, I feel like they deserve the credit for being there and being able to get our folks to medical appointments and shopping for that matter. So, you know,
I would agree, Brendan. I mean, give them a hats off from the board. I mean, I'm betting in the majority of these cases, these people don't have another alternative. So, you know, they're struggling for a ride to doctor's appointments, they're struggling for a ride to shopping if it wasn't for this van and our drivers out there. So, you know, hats off to them for providing that service that these people otherwise might not be able to get to where they need to go.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, too, I'm going to be in touch with Kelly McCarthy, who is the grant coordinator over at Highland Valley Elder Services, to see, so, and you guys know this, there are certain towns that just fall outside of our service area that we had difficulty, you know, getting to. For example, Springfield was a big one. So we would often rely on volunteers through Title III funding to get people over to, say, Bay State Medical Services. But given the situation that we're in, and given that most of my volunteers are 65 and up, I just don't feel like it's appropriate. And the state has, you know, pretty clearly asked us not to be using volunteers unless it was absolutely necessary. So we had this gap in services. And given that we were having low ridership because of the pandemic, I've made exceptions on a case-by-case basis to figure out how we can still get people over to Bay State using our vans. But it takes time, the logistics, and it doesn't seem like that much, but when you take 1 or 2 Springfield appointments and you got 2 part-time drivers working, you know, the pickup times and everything that's involved with that can certainly create a kink in the schedule. And, you know, just getting over 141 can be a nightmare, never mind navigating parts of downtown Springfield. Luckily, Bay State's a pretty quick, you know, access right off the highway. But what I'd like to do is, if we start finding that we're running a little bit over what's allotted in city appropriations for our part-time drivers, I'm going to try to see if some of that Title III funding that would have been used for volunteers' mileage reimbursement could potentially be used to pay for hours that our drivers are in a different service area that we wouldn't normally provide a ride to. So I think that's going to be my approach for anything that we start going over in the red with. Because again, the logistics of doing a Springfield trip can be involved. And so I know that it could easily, sometimes we've brought people over to Bay State, someone will go in for what they think is a basic appointment. And, you know, while this is rare, it still can happen. We had one person who ended up being in the unit for 3 hours, got discharged for a hot minute, and then was immediately sent back in to then be placed inside an overnight unit. So, you know, things are, you know, you can never say it's as simple as 1, 2, 3 done. And I'm mindful of that, and so it takes time and resources to make that happen. But again, we want to address the gap in services that would have been handled by our volunteers, but now cannot. So I don't want to restrict anybody, but I have to do it on a case-by-case basis. And if I can certainly use Title III money to pay for the drivers, that's, you know, all the better. I don't have to dip into revolving account money, because this is the first time our revolving account, and I apologize because I should have been placing some of the balances on our accounts. I didn't do this on this report or the last one, I don't think. But we're at a point now where we have a healthy van account. And the reason being is because if we don't have grant money going forward, I anticipate using a portion of that account towards purchasing a new van, which would eliminate some of that burden from general funds or trying to use capital improvement money, whatever the case may be, is that we could help, you know, buy into a new van if needed. And also that account is there for maintenance and repairs, as it always has been. So this is the first time in a long time that we've had a healthy account, but we've got a van that's on the way out. So we'll see what happens. I know that there's some CARES Act money through the city that was possibly being used to purchase.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, is there any way we could tap into the CARES Act? Because you really are being restricted to not have volunteers. So I wonder if we could tap into that money as well.
Yeah, I'll have to follow up with the mayor. I know that I think she was working on purchasing, and it's actually kind of funny because it's the van that I had requested in my capital improvement back when I submitted the budget. But what I was trying to look for is Ford Transit. I think they're a hell of a lot more ideal than what we have right now. Our wheelchair vans right now, they're great in the sense that there's plenty of room, and based on the seating capacity, we're able to give 2 people a ride at the same time. But they're gas guzzling machines, and it's just at this point, I think if we were to purchase, something like a Ford Transit, and that's something that actually I think that, and again, I would have to follow up with the mayor on this. I think that she had put in with CARES Act money for actually the same type of vehicle, better on gas mileage, and the one that I had requested for the capital improvement plan actually includes wheelchair seating as well. Only one wheelchair, but we're only doing that anyway on our larger vehicles. So I think you save way more on gas money. They're not as large, which I guess depending on, what kind of services we're talking about can matter. But overall, I think it's just a better fit for the kind of work that we're doing. So if in fact they did get some vehicles through the CARES Act, there is a possibility that we can use something like Ford Transit. But again, I'll have to follow up with the mayor to get the specifics on that.
Good.
And then as far as outreach services, I just want to provide, some quick stats on that since the pandemic. Both Jenna and Linda have been working with 162 unduplicated clients for a variety of needs. A good chunk of the folks that they've been working with during this pandemic have been for the congregate meals. And so this is, Jenna, and I give her a lot of credit for making sure that the registration and everything that we've done for Highland Valley, as far as getting the food and making sure that people have all their information in, has been, she's been a critical or key role in this. So it's been nice to have that. And she's spearheaded the project the entire way. So anyway. All right, and this is something that we had talked about. As far as September goes, this was the month that we launched the second meal for the week, so we're doing Mondays and Fridays now. The location is still the same. We're at 50 Payson in the back parking lot, except now we're from 11 to 12. So that was previously in August, and going all the way back to July, I think when we started these, we were doing 11:30 to 12:30. So the pickup times have changed, but we're still giving an hour window for folks to come in and pick up their food. But something that I had mentioned at last meeting that I think is worth, and maybe even having some board input on, is that, as we get into colder weather, whether or not the COA is going to be able to, provide a delivery service for that. And as long as this, program keeps on turning out the numbers that it has, we'll most likely keep on adding more days if possible. I feel like food resource is a really important thing right now, and that we need to keep focusing on that. Because if we have a spike of COVID in the fall, a lot of people, are going to be avoiding grocery stores. So that means people aren't going to be prepping food probably the way they normally would, and they may be relying on pre-made meals to just easily throw in the stove or in the microwave to make sure they're getting by for the day. So,
Brendan, what's the process? I'm trying to visualize how the meals are distributed.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Salvo House in Easthampton, but the Highland Valley Kitchen is actually in the Salvo House. We have a driver or a staff person, whoever's readily available, go down and get coolers, but each one of the meals is in an individual plastic tray. So we're able to, the process is super easy given that they're in trays, and then we usually get a bag with different fruits or dessert and then some beverages and stuff like that. So usually we end up with 2 massive containers, but as far as distributing them, people are just pulling up to the back parking lot of 50 Payson. We have one lane designated in the back parking lot. People pull up, then they leave, and it's just kind of a one-direction pathway, and people can exit both sides, either on the Williston Ave or back out onto 50 Payson. But it's been pretty smooth, and given that we have the hour window, distribution we're not running around tearing our hairs out. People kind of come in, and we also have, and I think I mentioned this at last meeting, people who are, friends or just awesome neighbors that are picking up for their folks. So we cut down on large lines or anything like that.
So the recipients, Brendan, aren't actually getting out of their cars?
Nope.
So
we've only had one person who loves to walk over directly to us. But other than that, everyone else is staying in their cars.
So how does, other than a massive snowstorm, how does cold weather impact delivery?
I don't think it'll impact the delivery. I think it may stop people from going out if it's really cold. Yeah. I have no problem being out there. It's an hour. Distributing food in an hour period is fine by me. I have plenty of protective wear and stuff like that for the winter. But I think what we'll see is a drop in numbers. People may not want to, go out and, even though they're not waiting long periods of time, I don't want to necessarily have people be discouraged from cold weather. And if we can possibly work with either a volunteer or find a way for our drivers to deliver it, I'd love to have that as an option, but that's a conversation I have to pick up with Highland Valley.
Okay. Yeah. So you're thinking more of a delivery process right to the home rather than some other option of pickup.
Yeah, and this is where it gets tricky because it crosses over the line between Meals on Wheels versus take-and-go meals. And I think this is something that a lot of ASAPs are kind of doing right now is given that we're in pandemic mode, I think you're seeing the ASAPs are starting to open up a little bit more on their regulations, and they're starting to allow for the potential of delivery, but it's a conversation I've yet to have with Highland Valley, which I will need to have in the near future.
So some of it might just be a wait and see to see how the weather might impact your numbers, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But I do want to keep that as an option because if someone has concerns, whether it's medical issues or they're just concerned about being out in the cold, I don't want to eliminate that. And so the way that we can find it through volunteer drivers or, like I said, our own drivers, I'll certainly go down that path.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So this month was the first month that we did an outdoor class. After consulting with the mayor and, of course, Bree, our health agent, we were given the specifications about how they wanted to see outdoor programming. And so essentially what it was is that regardless of whether someone had a medical condition and couldn't wear a mask, or if they were wearing masks, we were asked to keep 14 feet of distance between participants, which was pretty easy to do because John from Parks and Rec gave us the field right near the swimming pool. It's in between the swimming pool and the baseball field at Nonotuck Park. And so we're very grateful to have Parks and Rec allow us to use our space, just because, there's nothing we can do here outside of the center. There's no room for it. We just don't have that kind of space. So anyway, we were using that field, and it was just nice to see people actually for the first time not picking up food and in other settings, but to actually see them enjoying something recreationally. So Lenny, who's been teaching here for the last year and a half, I want to say, was there, and it was really awesome. And I think everyone was super excited to, be together, but of course with safe distancing. So wanted to acknowledge that, because it was really awesome just to see that.
How many people came?
We only had 4, but we only stuck. The other thing is too, and this is something that I had talked to, or maybe had mentioned in an email to Joe, because he was wondering why it wasn't publicized in the September newsletter. We wanted to kind of give it a test run with the core people who were there. So out of all the core people, 4 identified as, I want to do this outdoors. This would be great. So we didn't publicize it in the September newsletter, just because we wanted to make sure that everything worked smoothly, just to kind of get the feel for it. Of course, for October, we will be publicizing it, so we'll see what we get for numbers. But yeah, I think small steps are the best, especially with our population. And we clearly identified boundaries. We had spray paint and we made circles. We measured out the 14 feet of distance from all angles, so that way, people were, had clear boundaries and understood what we were asking of them. And then we also had the instructor sign a waiver, and that's standard practice through Parks and Rec, that just said, hey, you're responsible for, sign-ins, to have an attendance list, and that you're responsible for anyone in this group. And so it kind of removed that liability, and there is language in there about COVID. So I think, it just, really reinforces the idea that you can't be responsible for any type of, cause of infection. And to be honest with you, it's pretty hard to determine what that is unless you're in large groups in very small settings, through contact tracing. But anyway, so that was nice. But so Tai Chi. And if we could fit in any additional outdoor classes, I know we're getting right into fall season here, and we are mindful of that. But we need to keep on trying and experimenting with it, because should we find out through OSHA inspection that our building just isn't prepared to have people back into the building anytime in the near future, then we'll be, looking for outdoor stuff in the spring as well. So I think it's best just to test the waters now and then figure out what happens for spring. All right. This is the month that we offered, and I know it sounds pretty minimal, but for us, it was a little bit of for at least our riders, it was a pretty big deal. We started offering special trips again. And we're doing it as 2 riders at a time in different time slots. So our drivers are running to the client's home, or, picking up 2 people, bringing them to, the location, and then going back out, picking up another 2. Again, the logistics of this can kind of be dicey, but we were able to do it. So we had Walmart in the farmer's market. Now, the reason why the farmer's market ended up being a big deal for some of our folks is that I just distributed 50 farmers market booklets for the coupons. And so the farmers market is on Sunday, where people don't have access to public transportation. So the PVTA isn't even an option at that point. So we obviously knew that a lot of our folks who qualified for the farmers market vouchers needed to get there. So we created 2 different trips this month. And so far we've had positive feedback on it. And it's nice to get people back out there so they can get fresh local produce at a discounted rate. So I think the other place was Walmart, which was something that people have been asking and asking and asking. And I just, it got to a point where, it was like, okay, I think we can do this. It just takes time. And it's kind of like, like I said, different time slots, 2 different passengers at the same time. But so, yeah, we explored with that this month. And if it keeps going, okay, and we've got the draw for people to go out to these. Maybe not, obviously, the farmers market after October, but maybe the winter market and other places we'll look at, continuing to broaden our special trips. And then as far as September 24th, Dawn, our activity coordinator, will be instructing a virtual intro to stamp carving class. So we're still doing arts and different things in the virtual setting. I think we might have a full class. I got to go and check the registration sheet. But that's kind of a quick recap to September. For October, we're still trying to solidify a lot of these dates, so I apologize. There's nothing specific in here just because we're working with a variety of different vendors. But Trevor Smith is supposed to, he actually went after a cultural council grant back last year, or no, maybe it was January. I can't remember now. Anyway, it's been several months, and he was supposed to have been here in March, at the end of March, and of course, we all know what happened. So he's sitting in this cultural council grant to do this Laughter for Wellness class, and we're trying to reschedule that with him because he has the money set aside, and we're working on how we can provide this in a virtual setting. I think now more than ever, people could use a therapeutic class like this. And just to see if we can get that rolling. So we're trying to get back to that. We're also working with Walgreens to create a drive-up flu clinic for our folks. It's a question that's been asked of us. It looks like we're hitting late October. That's the only availability that Walgreens has. But our activity coordinator spoke with Our Lady of the Valley, and they're very kindly allowing us to use their parking lot just because we don't have the space here. We can't do a drive-up flu clinic here. It just would be a disaster for all the same reasons that we don't do a drive-up take-and-go lunch here. It's just we're in a corner of a very busy area of town, and I just don't think it's safe between Union Street traffic and trying to cut down Center Street. It's just, I don't want anybody getting into an accident. But we are working on that, and Our Lady of the Valley would allow us to use their parking lot so we can do the flu clinic. And I think anything that can help reduce, COVID, potential infections, and not that the vaccine would, protect you from COVID, because it wouldn't, but certainly we want our folks to be prepped to avoid catching just the regular flu and not think that they have COVID and going to get tested, because God knows what we'll have for testing in the fall, and especially the peak of flu season. So anyway, we're hoping that this will help our folks take necessary, steps into protecting themselves from the regular flu, so they don't think that they have COVID and go out and have a false negative on a test when there's limited tests to begin with. So anyway, and then finally, we were working out plans to do it's been labeled a reverse trick or treat. Again, we were trying to work with the Ray of Elvis because that's someone that people seem to really like here. He's always had a good turnout, has really awesome rapport with our folks. And so we were going to try, and we're still waiting to hear back. I'm not sure if it can happen, but we were thinking about targeting senior housing throughout town here. So that's 5 different sites potentially that we could be going to. And if we could do a little mini concert in like a common area, and then drop off bags of candy to each individual units. That's something that we were exploring in the spirit of Halloween. But yeah, so that's pretty much it as far as the director's report goes. If you guys have any questions, certainly feel free to ask. I know I've been talking a lot.
Any questions at all of Brendan? Sounds good. It's great. To your point earlier, I think, Brendan, it's great to see the activity. I just hope the world is seeing a little bit of it going on too. So this is about as close to normal as the COA can be right now, which is, I think, great.
Yeah.
If we shift over to old business, anything else about the CARES Act?
I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. I've been working with IT to purchase. Originally, I was going to purchase 5 iPads, but I don't want to spend CARES Act money unless it's absolutely, I don't want to dump money on 5 tablets to find out that there isn't much of a draw to this. So one of the things that I was originally going to do is purchase iPads that would need some type of Wi-Fi service, whether it was, through the person's individual Wi-Fi or having a hotspot. And our IT person suggested against that because, if it's someone that lacks Wi-Fi or doesn't have a tablet, that's an extra process to involve a hotspot. And while it might be easy for some of us, we do anticipate some of our folks not knowing how to work with a hotspot and a smart device. So we're going to be entering potentially something with AT&T. I'm sorry, Verizon. Verizon would have the cell service already on the tablet, so people wouldn't have to worry about creating a hotspot, and that they could just, we would have all the account information laid out for them, and so that they would literally just have to click on a button to get into one of our virtual classes. So we made it accessible. So with the cell plan, though, of course, that drives up the cost, and then there becomes a monthly premium. The one thing that I do like about this, though, is that we're not bound by a yearly contract. We can cut off services at the end of the month. So if we found out that just, people weren't really drawn to it and that people were still, on the fence about it, at least we wouldn't have dumped a bunch of CARES Act money into tablets that aren't being used, that we have, 2 tablets that can be rented out to anybody, and then we'll see how that program grows. If it's something that's in high demand, certainly we'll look for additional grant money. But what I have done is that money that would have been used, the rest of that money that would have been used in the 5 iPads is going towards personal protective equipment. So gloves, masks for staff or clients, no matter when we do open. So that's pretty much it on the CARES Act, but I just want to give everybody an update.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Let's jump into new business.
Yeah, so maybe some of you have already seen this, but just to let you guys know, reopening, I would like to have some support from the board, but we just found out within the last week and a half, based on the press release that came from the mayor's office, that our building is closed until December 31st. So while this is unfortunate, I think it still gives us more time to look at areas that we need to, modify or improve for when we do open. So if anybody asks, and then, they're wondering when we're opening right now, we've got December 31st. And I think, again, we're going to have to know what inspections, whether or not we have the proper HVAC, and I'm certain that we don't, but I'm not an HVAC person. But whether or not our system as it stands right now is going to be adequate for serving X amount of seniors. I mean, that's just something that, the DPW is currently working with to kind of inspect all municipal buildings through OSHA, and we'll see what turns out. But for now, we're down until December.
So Brendan, that was one of my questions regarding that. Are we on schedule to have the HVAC checked, inspected?
They are currently working on it. I don't have any dates yet, but I know that we've been included in the process. So, and it needs to happen. I mean, I attended a school committee meeting, and they're even, I think the mayor is being really cautious, and she's even questioning whether or not the high school, which is one of our newest municipal buildings, is even, ready to support. I mean, obviously schools are closed, but in the future, whether or not it's ready to support what they'll need to be doing as far as, precautionary measures. So, I mean, we're in a 1931 post office, so I think we'll probably need some extra care.
Yeah, called open the windows.
Yeah.
Don't put that in minutes, Joe.
Right.
Like the good old days, open the windows.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So as far as the low-income housing energy assistance, this has been things that we've been receiving calls about. This is our fuel assistance program. And right now things are kind of held up, and it's really tough. We're trying to reassure our clients that, recertifications are going out, and that we potentially be able to help new applicants, but I talked to Tracy Kelninkowski at Community Action, which is the organization that is responsible for monitoring and overseeing fuel assistance. It sounds like we may be getting our new applications by mail, hopefully in the next week or so, but I have no idea. There's still a lot of questions. All of their funding is tied up in federal, money. And so it's, we don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I know that it's been something a lot of people have been calling about, and we're trying to give answers as quickly as we can. But as of right now, people should be getting recertifications, and we will be helping them as we did in previous years. It's just, again, we have to do kind of a curbside drop-off. Sometimes we may have to just go up and pick the documents from the applicant, but we're avoiding the home visits in the sense that we're not walking into anybody's home just to reduce any risks. But yeah, so that is something that we're trying to get answers for. So if anybody should ask, know that we are working with the Director of Community Action to try to secure fuel assistance. It's one of our, outside of Medicaid, I would say that fuel assistance is probably our second highest benefit that comes in for our folks. I mean, we're averaging about $50,000 for fuel assistance in our community elders 55 and up. So it is a popular program, and I think it's great as we head into the cold season that we have some type of buffer for our folks, especially the most vulnerable. But it is something that still hasn't been solidified. So, but yeah. As far as open enrollment. And I just kind of wanted to give you guys a heads up from where we were coming from with from our department. I met with Outreach. Jenna should be trained and ready to go for open enrollment in the next few weeks. She'll be underneath either myself or Linda to transition into the open enrollment. But one thing we quickly made clear during our meeting is that we are not doing home visits. The state is avoiding that. I don't think we should be. But as a policy perspective, I think when we put out the news about open enrollment, we're going to make it very clear that we can't walk into someone's home at this point. And God knows what October will be. We could see a spike. And again, it's not, yes, staff safety is a huge part of this, but it's also us being a potential threat to someone. So if we're asymptomatic walking into someone's household with masks even, there's still a risk there. So I feel like people who require a home visit are probably more vulnerable than others. And that's why they're asking for that service. But we're, personally, I think, as our department keeps moving along with these changes, is that we have to stand firm on this, that we would have to require someone else to, a family member, a friend, but I just don't think it's appropriate for us to be going into people's houses, especially as we're hitting peak season with both flu and potentially COVID. So,
and Brendan, that open enrollment isn't something that can be done remotely?
It can be, but it's tricky. When you're going over complicated health insurance information, people want the visual piece of it, which I understand, I do. But the only thing I can offer to that is sending our plan comparisons via email, or if they don't have email, sending, printouts of plans that we've found for that person. Yeah. And I know it's going to take extra time. And yes, we can do it over the phone, but there's something, again, and I understand it, there's that visual piece of it that people really like. And if they're enrolling into something especially, you want to see who the hell's enrolling you into a plan.
Right.
You want that, okay, yeah, I know for a fact I was down at 19 Union Street, and we've even gone as far as to say that, we're looking at how we could potentially do an office visit, but again, that would be underneath, very specific circumstances, but we will offer virtual Hangout or virtual like Google Hangout or Zoom if they wanted. We could do that, and we can actually avoid giving personal information on a virtual session. I actually had someone who came up with this idea, and it was really, really simple. that when it came down to actual enrollment and when we would need things that were confidential, such as a Medicare claim number, personal information, that we would then transition over to a landline. And even though we're still on the virtual space, we would then just be talking to them and getting their information over the phone. So that way, none of it was being brought up, because there's been obviously a bunch of concern over confidentiality with Zoom. It's just, last thing I want is someone to hack into our city account or something like that, right, and get access to someone's Medicare information. It's just not where I want to be. But it's a simple workaround, that phone call and then getting that information from them directly over the phone, hell of a lot safer, and it's nothing that's going to be recorded, on a virtual platform like this or anything like that. We can get that information without compromising, our client.
Good.
And finally, one of our largest grants, as you guys know, and I talk about it all the time, is our EOEA formula grant. Now, what's happening is we received an email from EOEA directly saying that we no longer have to submit a grant balance document towards the state, which means now that we can actually roll over any grant money from the previous year and add it to the new fiscal year. And so while we see this loosening of guidelines, that's really nice, but some have speculated that maybe they're trying to make it a little bit easier because there's the potential of cutting that formula grant. So I don't know what it means. I don't know if we're going to get $12 per senior, but it is our largest grant. And one has to wonder if they're loosening up guidelines and they're allowing us to roll over funding from the previous year, whether or not we're going to be facing some type of cut. And it does, it does kind of, pop up. We still haven't heard. We might find out by the end of this month. And that's the crazy thing, and it always has been the case with the formula grant, is that we won't know usually until 2, possibly almost like 3 months into the new fiscal year, whether or not what we've received for grant funding. So I think that's just something important to note. I don't know where we're going to be once the state does make a determination, but hopefully we're not left scrambling around. So I've had to, and a lot of our folks that were being funded off that grant, 2 in particular, they left when the pandemic first broke, and it is likely that even if they look to come back to this job, the jobs that they did have, we won't be supporting those roles anymore, just because I have no idea. I don't want to offer a position to someone not knowing whether or not I can fund it. So,
right.
So that's kind of looming, and it's certainly something that a lot of directors throughout the Commonwealth are wondering about. It makes you wonder. At first, I was like, "Oh, great, loose guidelines, and yes, we get to roll over money." But then when someone had brought that up, I was like, "Well, yeah, it could very well be them staging, getting us prepared for like what might be coming down the road."
Yeah. Okay. Any questions for Brendan? Any comments? Any thoughts? Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Doing a great job.
Let us know if you do get that inspection, Brendan, and let us know what I'm with you. I'm guessing that it's not going to be good, and I'm not sure how, in the age of that building, I'm not sure how eventually we get the building open, short of a vaccine. But we'll just roll with it as we've been rolling with it. If there's no other questions, keep up the good work, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I got one.
Go for it. You're almost too late, Eileen.
I had to take myself off mute. I was talking to Brendan earlier. We still have openings on the board. For instance, today I was possibly not going to be able to attend, but I didn't want to wreck not having a quorum. So I really would like to challenge the board members to, I think we have 3 openings still on the board. So if we could really seriously consider nominating individuals for the board position, In order to apply, you go online, or if someone wants to, they can even call Barbara LaBombard, and she can direct them how to find the form. It's a Board of Directors volunteer form. But I would really like to challenge my fellow board members to nominate someone. Other than you, Tom, everybody on the board right now is somebody that I convinced to join. So it's time for someone else.
Well, keep going, Eileen. You're batting 1,000. Keep going. I think
That's
I've told.
okay. I'd like to see some fresh ideas and, open it up, and maybe we can even get some more youth in here too, because we have that. I think it's got to be, there's a 25% whatever as far as the age of the board member. But I think we handle the age portion for being old enough, and maybe we need to think about younger ones.
No, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
I believe your numbers are correct. We currently have 6 members, and I believe our membership is 9.
And what is a quorum for?
A quorum would be 5.
5.
Which we have. And as Eileen said, she bent over backwards to make the meeting because she knew Pat wasn't going to be here. So, we can only afford to have one person not be here before we fall short of a quorum.
Yeah.
And I believe, Chuck, it says in most, or in the city bylaws, however it's worded, it's basically a majority of your board makes a quorum. So for us, it's 5 of 9. I've joked with you all before that when I came on the board, again, Eileen mentioned too, that I believe it's the cutoff age was 60. There has to be a certain percentage above 60 and a certain percentage below 60. When I came on the board, I was the token youth. I believe I was about 32 years old when I came on the board. I won't tell you how old I am now. So I've been on the board for a little while. But to your point, Eileen, if we could, based on people you all come in contact with, a 30 or 40-year-old, somebody out there would be a great addition to the board. But that doesn't discount other seniors, obviously. The older I get, the younger the seniors are. So it would be great to fill it out. Chuck, I know you come into contact with a lot of people. We all do.
Sure.
So if you think of somebody who's, and I'm impressed that Eileen's responsible for everybody on this board except me. That's great. What'd you stop at that number for, Eileen?
They're probably all kicking me too.
No. Not at all. Got some great people. So yes. But thanks for that reminder. Let's talk it up right now and see if we can get some more folks on the board.
Yeah, because it does take almost clearly a minimum of 2 months once you fill out the paperwork to even get in. So
right.
So we gotta get jumping on this. Although it's so much easier being able to Zoom in or call in, but at one point we'll physically need to get in.
Sure. Sure. Okay.
Joe, really quickly, I do have a few minutes, so after this meeting, if you want to call me, we can catch up if you want.
Okay. Thanks, Brendan.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm good.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. If nobody makes a motion, we're going to stay here.
Okay.
So moved.
Joe makes a motion. Pat
I'll second it.
I think Pat beat you to it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Next meeting, October 20th. See you next meeting. Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Yes, you too. Thank you.